Chapter 25. Light for the Journey. The door to the windowless room was just as they had left it, propped open about an inch with a stick. Inside, Dune set his backpack on the small table, which they'd stood upright when they were here before, and reached inside. He brought out a light bulb.
"The reason I was late getting to the plaza the day we left," he said, "was that I had to wait till Torin was out of the house so I could go in and get these. And then I had to wrap them all up in Dr. Hester's rags and bandages so they wouldn't clink against each other in my pack and break. It took longer than I thought it would." "But you got all of them?" Lena asked. "I did, so here we go."
Once again they opened the small door in the wall and moved the handle, and once again the panels slid upward and revealed the rows of diamonds.
"Now," said Dune, "we need to get one working."
Gingerly, he lifted a diamond from the lowest shelf. He carried it outside, along with one of the light bulbs. Lena followed. They found a clearing among the trees, and Dune placed the diamond on the ground, in the full light of the sun, standing it upright on its collar of golden metal.
"Now we wait," Dune said.
They sat down on a fallen tree, side by side. They heard the voices of the people of Sparks in the distance, cheerful and excited. A bird hopped in the branches above their heads, making a tiny pip-pip sound, answered by another pip-pip farther off. A cloud of gnats danced in the sunlight. The blue diamond sat there, unchanged. They waited some more.
"Is it time?" Lena said at last. "I think so."
They stood up. Dune picked up the diamond and turned it over. He screwed in a light bulb, flicked the switch, and the bulb lit up. It shone with the brilliance of 100 candles, blasting their faces with light. Then they ran, Dune carrying the diamond with its shining light bulb high above his head, back to where the people stood eating their breakfasts on the mountainside.
"Look!"
Dune shouted, and Lena shouted too.
"Look, everyone!"
People dropped their food and stared. Voices rang out from everywhere.
"What is it? Where did it come from?" "Is it magic?" someone called. "No, not magic," said Dune. "It's electricity." "Electricity?" yelled Torin. "Like with your generator?"
Everyone crowded around. They gawked at the shining light bulb. A miracle! Its steady beam bright even in the morning sun.
"But I don't get it," Kenny said. "What makes it shine?" "It makes electricity from sunlight," said Dune.
"No," said Bun Barlow, craning his head forward and frowning. "Impossible."
"And yet, there it is," said Mary Waters.
Dune's father spoke up.
"Son," he said, "you've brought this thing out of nowhere. How did you find it? How do you know about it? I think you need to explain."
So Dune and Lena explained together, telling the whole story, or almost the whole story. They left out the part about the wolves. Telling that, they knew, would only cause trouble. Mrs. Murdo would have nightmares about it. Dune's father would be aghast at the terrible risks they'd taken. The villagers might want to go after the wolves and kill them, though the wolves were only doing what all creatures do, trying to stay alive. So Lena and Dune did not mention those moments of terror and danger. They kept that part of the story to themselves, like a dark stone that was the secret partner of the bright jewel they'd brought back. People wanted to touch the diamond and examine it. Hands reached out and shoulders bumped. Ben pushed through, saying, "Make way, please, I need to see this." And Wilmer Dent edged in sideways, and Lizzie said,
"We had electricity in Ember. Everybody had it."
But Dune backed away.
"Wait!" he cried. "We have to get started. We don't have much time."
From his bulging pack, he extracted the box of light bulbs that he'd borrowed from Torin. Torin shrieked,
"Those are mine!"
"Yes," said Dune.
"And you'll be proud to know they're going to be used for something so important."
Lena and Dune climbed up onto one of the trucks. Raising their voices so everyone could hear, They took turns explaining what the scavengers should expect when they went down into Ember, the narrow path that led along the cave wall, the unknown regions, and the chasm. They'd be laying a sturdier bridge across it with planks and pipes brought from the sparks.
"We'll know right away if people are still there," Dune said, "because we'll see their fire. But I think they've probably gone already."
He explained that there would be search teams, each one led by former citizens of Ember. The teams would go to all the different neighborhoods, collect anything useful, and pile it in certain spots. The team led by Dune and his father would go down into the pipeworks. Lena and Lizzie would lead a team to the storerooms. Clary Lane would lead a team to Ember's greenhouses, where she had been the manager, and Edward's team would check the library and the school. Other teams would cover the rest of the city. The search would go on for about 8 hours. Dune chose Martha Parton to keep track of the time by burning 8 candles, one after another, in Harkin Square. Privately, he hoped that the Trogs might have left their hourglass behind, but he couldn't count on that. At the end of 8 hours, Martha would blow 3 blasts on a loud whistle. Then the teams would carry all they'd collected back through the unknown regions, put things into packs, carry them up to the top, and load them into the trucks to be taken back to Sparks. It took nearly an hour to make the preparations. Dune gave each of the team leaders a diamond and a light bulb, and each person stood his or her diamond in the sun and waited while it soaked up light. Dune had tested this back in Sparks. In about 15 minutes, a diamond could take in a charge that would last at least 8 hours. Meanwhile, Lena, who had brought along a ball of string, cut short lengths of it and passed them out to all those who would be leading the search teams. She also gave each person several sacks, which they'd use for collecting, as well as a few candles, just in case any of the light bulbs failed. She and Dune had brought with them all the matches they'd saved from their trip. When enough time had gone by, people screwed in their light bulbs, flicked their switches, and jumped and yelped and laughed gleefully as the bulbs lit up. Maddie, who wasn't one for jumping and laughing, gave one of her rare smiles. "So," she said, "Casper's ridiculous quest had one good result after all."
"Now tie one end of the string around the ring," Lena said, "and the other to your belt. That way you can carry the light and leave your hands free."
It worked pretty well for a plan made up on the basis of so little knowledge. Dune and Lena led people the short distance up the slope to the crack in the mountainside. The two of them went in first, carrying only Dune's small generator. Once they were standing on the ledge, Dune stopped cranking, and they looked down. No light. Not even the faintest glow.
"They've left,"
said Dune, and Lena said,
"Good."
Then began the process of leading nearly 100 people down the long, narrow path along the cave wall. Their diamond lights lit the way far better than candles, but still the going was hard, and many people were terrified. There were shrieks from those who tripped on a rock or stumbled too close to the path's edge, and wails from those overcome by fear of the long descent into darkness. But at last, the whole troop trudged out across the unknown regions, crept and tottered and screamed their way across the bridge over the chasm, and entered the city. The stink of old smoke filled the air. The teams took a few minutes to organize themselves and recover from the ordeal of the descent, and then they spread out, moving through the streets to their assigned neighborhoods. For hour after hour they poked into every room, hall, and stairway, every cupboard and cabinet, every nook and cranny, collecting what was useful and leaving what was not. It was a thorough search, but not a quick one. The former citizens of Ember were constantly seized by memories and often insisted on going blocks out of their way to visit the house they'd lived in, or the place where they'd worked, to pick up some small treasure they'd left behind. And the people of Sparks were so astonished by the city that they asked a million questions and sometimes just came to a halt and stared. But as the hours went by, the search grew more businesslike. The conversations dwindled and the side trips ceased. At various corners throughout the city, piles of useful things grew higher and higher. Clary's team, out in the greenhouses, gathered seeds of several kinds of beets and greens and squashes unknown to the farmers of Sparks. Edward's team found, to his great distress, that the Ember Library had been emptied out, but the 3 books in Miss Thorne's old schoolroom remained: the Book of Letters, the Book of Numbers, and the great Book of the City of Ember. No one could say that these were really useful, but they took them anyhow to remember the city by. Doone's team, down in the pipeworks, wound through the tunnels to the mayor's secret room, from which, as Doone had discovered, the mayor and his cronies had had no time to remove very much on that last frantic day. Stacks of cans, boxes of light bulbs, and cartons of supplies still stood there, surrounding the mayor's armchair, his table, and his plate spotted with moldy bits of food. Doone remembered what Mrs. Murdo had said about seeing the bulging bags on the walkway beside the river as the mayor was trying to escape. His team retrieved those, too. Just carrying all these things back through the tunnels and up the long, long pipework stairway took that team all the hours of the search. Doone had thought there might be time for him to go back to his old home and look for his book of insect drawings, but at the end he decided against it. The world above was so full of wonderful insects that he could simply start a new book. It would be far better than the old one. Lena's team found very little in the storerooms. As the Emberites had known, the city's supplies had been nearly gone. A few rooms held forgotten boxes of safety pins and rolls of crusty string and tins of salt, and there were some cans of food, mostly spinach, and some boxes of electrical cords and plugs. Lizzie found a stray pair of pink socks that she claimed for herself. Most of the other stuff was broken or spoiled and not worth taking. But Doone had told Lena what Yorick said about the back room of the shop, where someone had been hoarding. Lena was sure she knew which shop it was. She'd bought her colored pencils there. It was the shop run by the young man named Looper, who had been the mayor's crony in the theft from the storerooms. He'd also been Lizzie's boyfriend, and when she saw the piles of things he'd collected, she sputtered with indignation.
"He told me he was taking just a little," she said. "What a liar! How could I ever have liked him?"
There were cans of food, boxes of paper, and pencils, even colored pencils, Lena saw with delight, packets of soap, and still more light bulbs. About halfway through the search, it was decided that some of the teams should stop searching and start toting things up to the surface. Doone's father, who wasn't able to carry things because of his hand, supervised this, sending some people to collect things from the various piles and bring them to the edge of the unknown regions, and other people to fill their packs and start up the path. It was a very long day. Legs and backs grew weary. People had to take rests, sitting on the benches in Harkin Square. Lena began checking back more and more often with Martha Parton, who was sitting on the steps of the gathering hall, keeping track of the time by burning candles. When only a few minutes remained before the search had to end, Lena left Lizzie in charge of her team and slipped away. First, she ran across Harkin Square, skirting the black rubble that was the remains of the Trog's bonfire, to the house in Quilliam Square where she and Poppy had lived with their grandmother, to see if she could find the drawings she had done then of the bright city of her imagination. She shone her light on the walls where she'd pinned them up, but they weren't there. In the bathroom cabinet, though, she found the almost empty tube of the medicine called Anti-B. She put that in her pocket. Then she ran back to Harkin Square and climbed the steps of the gathering hall. She went along the corridor, into the mayor's office, through the door that led to the stairs, and up the stairs to the roof. Once more, for the last time, she looked out. The city looked as she had never seen it before, dotted with bright, moving lights, one here, one there, wherever the search teams were at work. Lights never used to move in Ember. The only light came from the giant floodlights fixed to the buildings and the lamps in people's houses. Now all those were dark, and instead the lights of the searchers flitted like luminous insects along the streets and within the windows. Martha's whistle blew, 3 long blasts. As Lena watched, more and more bright dots emerged from buildings, moved along streets toward the collection piles, swarmed about for a bit, and then joined a stream of lights, all moving in the same direction, as people headed with their bounty out toward the meeting place at the edge of the unknown regions.
"Goodbye, Ember,"
Lena said. She said it out loud, as if the city could hear her.
"Goodbye forever this time, my city."
Then she went down the stairs and out into the streets again to rejoin the expedition. She found Dune standing beside the white rocking chair, guiding people into the line that led out toward the cliff.
"We won't see Ember again,"
said Dune.
"No,"
Lena said.
"but it's all right. I said goodbye."